Hello, welcome to the next lecture in our Turnaway study series. Today I'm going to talk about why people have abortions and why they have later abortions. Today's recommended readings are two. One is by my colleague Antonia Biggs on why women in the Turnaway study sought abortions, and the other is I wrote with my colleague Katrina Kimport about who it is who seeks abortion at or after 20 weeks. And I hope you'll find those articles helpful. I'm going to try to switch screens to quickly watch a video of that I mentioned in the book about by an Ohio representative who is the author of many abortion restrictions. This is not who you see on the screen. You'll see him next. In Ohio, being interviewed by an Al Jazeera radio TV special, The Abortion War, an interviewer asking him about his laws. So here we go. I hope this works.
What do you think makes a woman want to have an abortion?
Well, there's probably a lot of, I'm not a woman, so I'm thinking now, if I'm a woman, why would I want to? Some of it has to do with economics. A lot of it has to do with economics. I don't know. It's a question I've never even thought about.
Prior to
So my favorite thing about that clip is actually the interviewer's face as she knowingly shakes her head at his response. Anyway, so he's the author of Abortion Restrictions, but he's actually never thought about why women would want to have an abortion. So I'm going to tell you what we've found. We asked women in the Turnaway study, almost 1,000 women, what are some of the reasons that you decided to have an abortion? And we didn't just have them pick from the list of acceptable answers. We let them say anything, and then we coded all their answers into different themes. And the most common theme is that they don't feel financially able to have a child. So 40% of women. And here's an example, a woman in California who said, my husband and I haven't had jobs in a while, and I don't want to go back to living with other people. If we had another child, it would be an undue burden on our financial situation. So she's mentioning economic reasons, but she's also saying she has living situation issues, and she also is trying to take care of at least one other child. The next most common reason is that it isn't the right time for a baby. Just over 1/3 of people, including this woman from California who said, mainly I didn't feel like I was ready yet, didn't feel financially, emotionally ready. The due date was the same time as my externship at school. Entering the workforce with a newborn would be difficult. I just wasn't ready yet. So this is also is found in a lot of other women. It's not that they never want to have a kid, but this time is not the right time. These circumstances are not the right circumstances. And then about 1/3 of women give partner-related reasons. This is from the woman that we call Brenda, who's featured in the book, who I've edited out her language that doesn't pass curse word restrictions, but it's very, very difficult to find a job when you're pregnant, to keep a job when you're pregnant, or to find and maintain a job with a baby, especially if your partner doesn't want to help. Domestic violence skyrockets because you're financially dependent on your partner because you have to be home with the kid, where you're like, oh no, I can't be homeless with this kid. I need him for money. Pregnancy is an incredibly scary thing, especially if you cannot trust the person you're with. The fourth most common reason is the need to focus on other children, and many people are surprised, but more than half of women seeking abortion in the United States are already mothers, and for many of them, their reason for wanting to have an abortion is to take care of the children they already have. And a 26-year-old woman from Illinois who, in fact, was denied an abortion said, in the beginning, I was doing good. I had my job and my kids and everything. But all of a sudden, everything came down. I lost my job, my bills started accumulating and everything, so I couldn't do it. I already had 4. How was I supposed to do it with another one without a steady job? And you know, everything came down on me. I'm not going to give you quotes for all the rest of them because we're trying to keep these lectures short, but you'll find in Dr. Biggs's article quotes for each of these, but the next common reasons are not emotionally prepared, health-related reasons, want a better life for the baby than she could provide at that point, not that she feels that she isn't independent or mature enough to have a baby, and then influences from friends or family. And note that influences from friends or family is not the same as coercion to do it. We find that it's very rare, extremely rare, that a woman has a pregnancy that she prefers to keep and someone else is trying to tell her to have an abortion. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it is very rare. And then one quick thing, the most common reason is financial, with 40% of women saying they don't have enough money. And so then the obvious question is, well, if we provided enough money, if we gave low-income women enough economic support when they had a baby, would they choose to have a baby instead of having an abortion? And I just wanted to point out that it's very rare or it's somewhat rare for people to have financial reasons be their only reason. So let's quickly shift our attention to why they have later abortions. So are they sitting around waiting to have an abortion? This is data from the Guttmacher Institute from 2016. 2/3 of abortions happen very early in pregnancy, and about 90% happen within the first 3 weeks, which they say is 12 weeks. I usually use 13 as the cutoff. But but we're going to focus in on this ones that happen later. They use 21 weeks as the limit, but about 1% of abortions actually happen after 20 weeks. And so these are the abortions that are most vulnerable to state restrictions, gestational limit bans. And so the question is, why would women wait? And I think one thing that's very annoying about working in abortion is that people use the word late-term abortion. And late-term to me means a late-term pregnancy is one that's past its due date. So that's not happening. Abortions are not happening after the delivery date, expected delivery date. And I think that some of the confusion over why women have later abortions is I say later and I mean after 20 weeks. Someone else hears later, they think late term, they think somehow we're talking 9th month. And you can see from this graph that the frequency of abortion dramatically decreases with every week. So for a 40-week pregnancy, if given the 40 weeks of possible pregnancy, only 1% are happening in the second half of a full pregnancy. So it's this is, so it's very rare to have a later pregnancy. But this Turnaway study is unique in allowing us to look at the reasons why women might wait. So this is data from the Turnaway study. You can find it in the book, and it shows you on the bottom are women in the first trimester. Again, I use that 13-week cutoff, so less than up through 13 weeks. Early second is 14 to 19, and then later is 20 plus. The orange bars show you couldn't have an abortion prior in the orange period. In the first 2 weeks, you haven't even conceived yet. And in the next 2 weeks, the fertilized egg is moving down the fallopian tubes and implanting enough that you could actually detect a pregnancy with a urine pregnancy test. So, and that's the earliest that can happen is at 4 weeks. So the purple is time to discover you're pregnant. You see for the first trimester people, they did it in on an average of 1 week. They took about that long to make the decision, and then another 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks maybe, to actually go and get an abortion. So everything, the timeline to get a first trimester abortion is tight. You know, anything slows you down, then you need everything to work out in order to get that first trimester abortion. If you look then at the top row, just to show you the extreme of examples, here are the women who have later abortions. And the biggest difference is that purple bar, that is the time to discover pregnancy. And you can see where the first trimester sample took just 1 week. The later abortion were already actually at 12 or 13 weeks by the time they discovered they were pregnant on average. And the pink bars, the time to make a decision, they're not statistically different between the samples. So it's not so much, the difference is not in how long it took them to make up their mind, it's in finding out you're pregnant. And then once you're later, the number of providers that are able to do your abortion dramatically goes down, the distance you have to travel goes up, the cost goes up, and so the time to find and get to a clinic becomes much larger. You can see that in the blue bar. This is from the paper about why do women have later abortions from the Turnaway study, and you can see that 80% of first trimester women said something slowed them down compared to 94% of women having later abortions. The asterisk on the rows show you that it's a statistically significant difference between the earlier and the later abortions. So not knowing where to go to get an abortion is a 20 percentage point difference. Difficulty getting to the procedure, raising money for the procedure, or finding insurance coverage. All of those are statistically different. I just told you that a big difference is not knowing about the pregnancy, and you can see that there's actually not a statistically significant difference in the percentage of women who say that slowed them down. So for first trimester people, that's 40%, and later it's 45%, but the time at which they discovered they were pregnant is dramatically different. 5 weeks for the first trimester and 12 weeks among the later. And I think that that's a little bit of a tricky thing. When I said, is there anything that slowed you down? People don't necessarily think of themselves not realizing they're pregnant as something that slowed them down, which they're probably trying to look for external things. So I think that the question didn't necessarily yield everyone. It clearly didn't yield responses from everyone about not realizing they were pregnant. In that paper that I wrote with Dr. Kimport, it gives you, we were trying to not just look at what are the predictors of being later in pregnancy when seeking abortion, but what sort of women, what profiles of women would describe who's affected by 20-week bans. And we did a different kind of statistical analysis than we would normally do, a cluster analysis to look at what features cluster together to describe this population. And we found that 80% of the women seeking later abortion fall in one of these groups. And in the paper that is the recommended reading, we give you an example of a woman who fit each profile. So nearly half are raising children alone, 30% report that they're either depressed or using illicit substances, a quarter have conflict with the man involved in the pregnancy or experience of domestic violence. About 20% said that they had trouble deciding, followed by problems accessing care, and then 12% young and nulliparous. And a leading cause of not realizing you're pregnant is being young. It's because young people often have irregular periods. They may not recognize pregnancy symptoms. And nulliparous is again not recognizing pregnancy symptoms. And so these 5 profiles describe 80% of the women seeking a later abortion. And I think it's my last slide, but one other comment is that not having pregnancy symptoms is not necessarily, people have a big range of physiological responses to pregnancy, and not having very strong symptoms can seem like a blessing for a wanted pregnancy. But if you need to get an abortion, not recognizing you're pregnant dramatically slows you down. Thank you very much for joining this lecture. Please feel free to send comments or questions to my email. Thank you.